question is, do buildings with sprinklers have to do anything? No. Do buildings with sprinklers have to do anything? No. This one?
Yeah, this one here is better. I'll try this one, yeah. There you go.
The question is from, Mom, this question is, do buildings with sprinklers have to do anything?
Just
Maintain their sprinklers?
Yes.
Just maintain them. Thank you. Do we need a letter?
No.
No letter. Do you need the evaluation? Nope.
No evaluation?
No evaluation. I just heard a question about maintaining. So, all of your fire protection systems need to be maintained, and that's per the code. There's standards on how to maintain them. So you most likely have fire protection companies who are maintaining your systems. Sprinkler systems are annual. You have fire alarm systems annually, fire extinguishers, and so forth. And the Honolulu Fire Department, we have fire inspectors who will go out to do the inspection of your building every 2 to 3 years. That's the how often we go out to do the inspections. So when we go out to do the inspections, we're going to make sure that your systems are being maintained. But as far as doing the actual maintenance of the systems, that's not us. That would be the licensed third-party fire protection companies, and there are a lot of them out there. So that's the answer for maintaining.
Lance, do you want to?
Good question.
Sit on.
Okay, the question is, can you hear me?
Barely.
You got to shout, I think.
Should I
Pass that mic.
Okay, I will just. Oh. There you go. I'll just have it
Take it off the stand.
The question is, does a dispute between an owner and the board regarding a service and assistance animal fall under the new mandatory mediation law? That is a good question. I hesitate to give a definitive response, but disputes regarding the Fair Housing Act and Chapter 515, I think it could be.
Yeah, I think it would be nuisance type stuff if that's the problem.
Yeah, and the documents, your documents, it very well may be under the new law. Question 2, if yes, are the parties able to choose between facilitative, mediation, or evaluative? And obviously, yes. You're always able to choose between that. Unless one party demands evaluative, then you will be bound to evaluative. And the third question, the law covers condo unit owners. Does this law extend to a tenant if the unit owner has rented their unit? So if the owner is not involved in the mediation, then I would say probably not. But if the owner is involved and the tenant is also involved in the mediation, then probably yes. And the dispute is also with the association, so.
I have a couple of fair housing type. Well, one of these is about, it's not really a question, it's about the cost, which I think the HFD guys have, the cost of doing all this work, and it forces somebody who's on Social Security out of their unit. Yes, I'm sorry to say, I don't think we're really equipped to advise on that, but the real problem is if one owner can't pay, everybody has to make up the difference. So this is the second question is about requiring an assistance animal. Apparently this is someone who has been told that they are not allowed to use the elevator, and their animal must wear a muzzle while using the stairs in and out of the apartment. I don't think that, I don't think that's going to fly with the general interpretation of the law. You can't say that someone with an assistance animal cannot use the elevator. You could probably say that their animal has to have a muzzle if there's some evidence that the animal has been aggressive. So I think, again, like I said in my presentation, be very cautious about imposing restrictions on assistance animals, because the answer is usually no. And so in this case, forcing someone to take their assistance animal down the stairs, probably not okay. Forcing the person to put a muzzle on their assistance animal, probably not okay unless there's evidence of aggressive behavior.
Okay, this question, our building with sprinklers was occupied in 1982. That is 36 years. How do we know the sprinklers still work? So the answer to that question is, aside from damaging yourself to see if it works, the fire protection company who maintains it annually, that's how you know it works. They actually run a test on the system to ensure that it's operating. They're going to check the sprinkler heads, make sure that they meet the standards in NFPA 13, and they're going to run a system to make sure that the water is flowing through a remote valve, and they'll insure it annually. So they'll tell you if the sprinkler system needs to be replaced or repaired or upgraded. If it passes the annual test, then you're good to go, and it should operate as it's supposed to be to the current standards.
Next question is, what are the consequences of not submitting a compliance letter or doing an evaluation if you're compelled to? I think in front of the ordinance, it's up to $1,000 fine or up to a year in jail. And I'll just do this next one. Is it recommended that high-rises not subject to the ordinance 1814, and maybe they're already sprinklered, still perform a life safety evaluation? Yeah, from the fire department's perspective, absolutely. Go get this done so you know how to make your building safer.
This is a question about where does the money for the condo trust fund come from? How much money is in there now? How many mediations and arbitrations does the fund expect to subsidize? What happens when the fund runs out of money? Does the state pay mediators, arbitrators directly? How does the trust fund know the dispute was legitimate and not a scam to get a mediator, arbitrator paid $3,000 or $6,000? Those are important questions. I don't know the answer to all of these because they're administrative questions for the department. But the statute does talk about funding the education trust fund, and that is paid through an assessment of $1.50 times the number of condo units included in the project, beginning on July 1, 2015, and that's in the Hawaii Revised Statute, Section 514B72. And so the funding comes from associations contributing to this education trust fund. And I don't know how the fund is, the funds are controlled, but the payments are made to the agency that handles the dispute resolution, which would typically be dispute prevention and resolution, and it would be handled as a normal business transaction with invoices and other documentation. I don't know what the other documentation is between DPR and the state to verify the authenticity of the mediation. This question, a different question, I already paid late fees and attorney's fees I disputed the allegations within 10 days. At this point, how long do I have to initiate mediation, arbitration, litigation? Again, that really is a fact-intensive question. It's going to also depend upon the provisions in your governing documents because there may be restrictions. I don't know. I think I'd just leave it at that. If you have questions, I think you need to talk to an attorney about what your rights are and whether there are any time limits on filing claims.
Okay, here, this is an interesting question, and I'm not quite sure I know the answer. What can you ask of a non-resident site manager who decides he needs an assistance animal? The implication is, could they tell him he can't have it? My guess would be that you cannot prevent him from having it if he is, he's an employee, not a resident, so I'm not exactly sure how that would come out under the law. I'd have to look, but I think my impression would be if push came to shove, you could ask him the questions you could ask of a resident. If he answers them positively, you couldn't prevent him from having that dog, even though he is a non-resident site manager. Quick question, can residential buildings limit assistance animals to dogs or cats? And in their bylaws, again, prohibiting pets has to be in your bylaws. Prohibiting assistance animals is virtually impossible unless they cause problems. So you could not amend your bylaws to restrict assistance animals if the law says that you have to allow them.
So that was my question, but my question is, can you limit them to just be dogs or cats?
No, I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't think you could, because
Okay.
the law is above your documents. Generally, private agreements cannot restrict what the law says can be
I
done.
chose not to do that, I was just curious if we could.
Yeah, no, I don't think you could, because again, private agreements. And one final quick one, can you have more than one emotional support animal? Yes, you can. I had a case once, this young girl and her parents lived in a one-bedroom apartment down on the Gold Coast. She had 2 golden retrievers and a cat. And when I said to the investigator, how many animals are too much? He said, I don't know, but 2 golden retrievers and a cat are not too much. So those are the circumstances, but any other questions?
Okay, this question is clarification of compliance deadlines, May 2nd, 2021 and May 2nd, 2024, extended to when? So due to Bill 72 recently receiving all the votes necessary to pass this past Wednesday, it appears the deadlines are going to be extended at least 2 years on top of this date. So the life safety evaluation will probably be 2023, my assumption is to be add 2 years to that date. Most likely from this past Wednesday, they passed it. So you're actually getting an additional 6 months on an extension. So November 13th, 2023. So everything gets extended. 2 years, even for the May 2nd, 2024, that would be 2026. So there's an extension on the deadline. So I know there's a document within the packet with a lot of dates. Those dates are going to be extended. We could get that information to you as soon as we get all the dates solidified.
So we got also November 13th of my question of 2026, is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't want to say that for sure because they voted to pass it on Wednesday, but there's nothing in writing.
But the year is 2023 to 2026, is that what you're saying?
Yes, for 2-year extension.
Just not sure whether it's from when the mayor signed the original ordinance on May 3rd to when the council adopted Bill 72 this past Wednesday. Yeah. So We're going to guess that it's probably the 6 months plus the 2 years. So November plus those 2 years, right?
Another question is that, so if you do the appeal and the 45 calendar days and all that stuff, 30 days, what does that do to the second day? If you're not in compliance and you're appealing it, 45 days, 30 days, does that extend the second deadline?
Also, the question is if there's an extension on the appeal,
Right.
because right now it's 45 days, so
Add that on here.
That could be extended.
You're asking if we would add that 45 days, the term for the appeal, onto the end of that line? We probably have to.
there's another question here. Is the fire safety evaluation worksheet official now, or is this only another draft? So we would say, if you go to our website and you get the life safety evaluation, that's the one that would be used for the evaluation. It's already published on our website, so that is the evaluation to use. Yes.
We can go and hire a person to do with that evaluation.
Yes, that's the evaluation.
We are actually, I'll be honest, we're trying to work with Councilmember Fukunaga's staff and members of the RIFSAC, Jane Sugimura, to make it a little bit easier for the engineers to work through right now, but that's a whole another process that we're kind of engaged in right now. But as it stands, what's available on our website, that's the official document. We wanted to make it available to everybody and not just farm it out to the design professionals, so everybody has access to it. So that's the document that they should be working from.
Because recently it's been like a moving target. I mean, we're not quite sure what is the official.
Well, it's always been that document since the mayor signed off on that ordinance back in May.
I have a short question. Does this new law apply to 421J? 421J is the statute that governs planned community associations, which is different from condominium associations. And the Real Estate Commission's jurisdiction is over condominium associations only. So the subsidized program is for condo associations only, not for planned community associations. But there is a mediation provision, of course, in section 421J13, which includes mandatory mediation, but that's going to be at the expense of the parties and not subsidized. Question is, what is Condominium Education Trust Fund? Question mark. State money available to AOAO. I mentioned earlier, it's funded by associations at a rate of $150 per unit annually.
Okay, here's a few. Can you clarify an emotional support dog is allowed in a purely residential condominium? Yes, it is, as long as you provide that basic information about disability and how the dog helps cope with the disability, and that's usually in written form. So you are allowed to have a emotional support dog in a purely residential building as long as you can justify the need for it by providing that information. Another quick, breed or weight restrictions. No, I'm sorry to tell you that you can't say large dogs are not allowed to be assistance animals. Again, you have to focus on the conduct of the animal, not the animal coming in. Is a doctor's note required for a comfort animal? Yes, it is. A comfort animal is an emotional support or assistance animal. It's not a service dog, but you do need some kind of written justification for your right or your need for the assistance animal if you're moving into a residential building. And I can't quite tell, should the manager or the board call the doctor if somebody brings in a form? Sometimes they should. There's supposed to be some kind of interactive dialogue sometimes between, if the doctor's note is not clear, they may follow up, or they may ask the owner who presented the note to follow up. but that's something else. I think unfortunately, we're pretty much out of time now, so if anybody had any other questions, they can come up and ask the speakers. I have a couple here I didn't get to, but I think it's about 11 now, so we're going to be closing up the formal part of the Condorama.